I'm Lindsay Baccardo. This is the Porch. This is actually a bookshelf and it's a spare bedroom, but imagine it's the porch. And what we do here is I get to bring on some of my favorite thought leaders, CEOs, who understand how human beings work, who come and talk about what's most important to them. And so obviously with Lauren, I thought we've got to talk about emotional intelligence. We've got a couple kind of surprises planned for you throughout this specific porch. Intrigue. And so we got to do it live in person. She's not a hologram. She's really here with me. And we're excited to talk to you about emotional intelligence. And we just want to check the chat. Will somebody say hey, so we know that the chat is working? That would be awesome. Sam's here helping us run this whole thing. Great. Hi, everybody. There you are.
Hey.
Hooray.
Everything's working. It's always a relief.
I just spilled water before we began. I don't know if drinking water is an emotional intelligence.
I think you're fine.
Okay, great. All right. So here we are. This is Lauren Moffatt.
Hey, everybody.
And we actually met like 2017. I was walking into a speaking event.
Okay, go ahead and say that.
I was walking into a speaking event and you were like, hey, Lindsay Baccardo? And I was like, hey.
Yeah, you blew me off hardcore.
I totally blew her off. And she's like, we should get lunch. And I was like, okay. But I was like in a different space because I was in a new environment. And here I go making a bunch of excuses so I don't look like a jerk. And a couple months go by and all of our friends in the consulting space were like, why haven't you two met yet? Why haven't you hung out? And I was like, because I'm an introvert. And so we went to breakfast at Patachou, obviously. And it was, I love that place.
I know, exactly.
Hi, Martha Hoover. And we had a blast. And it was so clear that we have similar backgrounds, being in kind of growing up in religious settings. Yeah. We had both studied and read from the same thought leaders. So as soon as we met, we're like, we got to start working together immediately. We started with spiritual retreats. That was 3 years ago now, where we would bring people together and talk to them about their religious experiences and how it helped or hindered their emotional intelligence and their growth. So that's how we started out. And now we get to do emotional intelligence work together. So you spend some time inside of companies with teams that are trying to figure out how to work together.
Right. And then individuals too. Really, I use that assessment. And so we really have this comprehensive tool that we use to really understand where people are with their emotional intelligence. And normally, they don't know that that's what it is. It's more or less like, I'm not getting the results that I want. I'm feeling stuck. I'm feeling stressed. I am not able to communicate the way that I want. People keep leaving the room and being pissed. It's a bunch of those things.
Yeah. And so the key, and we know, and I know from research on generations, that emotional intelligence, understanding how to connect with people, how to help them become more self-aware, this is the future of work, especially because we all work from home until who knows.
Yeah, exactly.
So why do you think, tell me a little bit about your story. When were you like, EQ is a thing and I need to work on it?
Yeah, so I was an HR manager. So this was, I don't even want to say, it was a long time ago. But I remember really wanting to be a stronger leader. And I could feel the edges of myself at that time. I think I was probably like 28 or 29. And it looked like I had a really hard time receiving feedback. I took it really personally.
Did you cry?
Secretly,
you're like, thanks for the feedback.
I might have avoided them for way too long. Maybe.
Oh, so you avoid them. You'd be like, Bill's mean. I love it.
I knew it was my own thing, but that was one of them. I think that, I would think I had it all together when I was in a meeting, and then something I said made the meeting go sideways and I wasn't sure what it was, which that's not helpful when you're trying to get people moving in the same direction, or when at that time I was laying out a new policy handbook, all those pieces. And I'm like, my meetings are not going the way that I think that they're supposed to go.
Totally.
Something's up with myself. And my stress was like on point. So I was answering my phone 24/7.
Your stress was keeping you like revved up.
Yes. So I could never come down. So if someone were like, hey, could you just move that? I'm like, oh my God, stop asking me to do stuff.
So cell phone 24/7.
Yes.
Saturdays you're working.
Yep.
Always on.
I had kids too at the time. Actually one. Yeah. So I just knew that if I wanted to step into more responsibility and more leadership, that these were some things that were definitely holding me back and that people wouldn't follow me.
So even if you have like, because a lot of times we talk about IQ and EQ or competencies and EQ. So even if you're like super smart and you know how to do something, that doesn't mean anybody wants to follow you.
No.
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 Exactly. Okay, so I'm curious, as we're sitting here in the chat, and I know we've got a bunch of friends on Facebook too who are watching, so we're so glad that you're here. I'm curious, when you hear the word EQ, when you hear about emotional intelligence, what do you think of when you hear about emotional intelligence? I always think about like people who are emotionally intelligent. Those are the people I want to be, that I want in my life. Those are the people that I want to be connected to. I want to follow an emotionally intelligent leader. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what people think. Oh, this is good. Lisa said self-aware and clued in. Yeah.
Ooh, clued in. That's a good one.
Emotionally, when you think of somebody who's got high emotional intelligence.
Not book smart.
Not book smart. I was just on with a leader today who was like, look, I don't have a high education, but I know how to lead other people well, which is interesting to think about, isn't it? I think of people that are aware of their feelings. Yep. Empathy. Mandy, good to see you twice in a day. The purpose of the team and the mission. They can read people. Reading people is huge. Ability to recognize one and others' emotions. Nailing it. You guys are talking so fast.
Active in therapy.
Yep.
Sense of the environment.
Active in therapy. Let's talk about that for a minute, because that's a generational thing too.
Oh.
So like boomers aren't like, I was talking to my therapist yesterday and I really learned that I have a wound. They don't typically. Now me and Gen Zs were like.
So like last week when I met my therapist, you're like, yeah.
What's your point? Keep going. Which therapist? Oh, is this Judy? Yeah, Judy's the best. I totally get it. Exactly. But even like generationally being okay with having emotional support is different. So I love that somebody said that. How well, Dina, this is awesome, how well you connect or you don't connect with others. And I'm sure some of you have had leaders who and I see this a lot on sales teams, the best salesperson becomes like the leader of the team, but they're not actually great at leading people. They're great at closing sales. Mm-hmm. You've seen that too.
All the time.
And so EQ is like a totally different skill set. Now, you know how they say IQ, you're either like smart or you're dumb? Is that true with EQ?
No, it's not true at all, which is all the more reason as a coach.
We can all grow.
It's like it's the purest thing where it's so fluid and it's a snapshot in time. So for instance, if I had a new job, and let's say I felt really confident before my other job, I'd been there 15 years. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling really good. And that means I feel confident. If I had to start a new job, my EQ, my confidence would take a dive a little bit because I'm in a new place and learning the new role. So we just know that we always can flex these muscles of EQ. It never ends. It changes all the time. And it's just something for us. It's always happening anyway. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of how aware are we and what are we working towards?
I think that's really smart. Yeah. Well, and two, when we think about all that we've been asked, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but all that we've been asked to go through, or we have been forced to go through in the last 6 months, our EQ has been challenged a ton.
Mm-hmm. A ton.
And not just like, and somebody said it here, flexibility. Yeah. We talk about like EQ, a lot of EQ has our little camera's wiggling. Do you see that? Okay. We're going to really try. We're on a very janky table right now.
It's part of COVID.
You know, we bought it off Amazon. Okay. But this idea of flexibility, being able to be flexible is a sign of.
Yeah, so exactly. It's one where you don't have to know all the answers. You can be agile. You can also be flexible with your team. It may not be the idea that I exactly want to do. I'm able to hold space for other opinions, and then we're able to grow and change for the better for all of us.
And I think generations, we talk about this a lot, LinkedIn friends, how people who are looking for a job are watching how companies handle COVID, how company leaders, because a company is not like a thing. It's all the people inside of it that make it a thing. And so how company leaders handle this type of pandemic, this type of emergency, this is going to make it either a millennial or a Gen Z is going to be like, I definitely want to work for you. I see that you can see and support me, or bye, I don't want to work here. I don't feel cared for, which is huge.
Yeah, there was just a recent study that was done actually in Indiana by a couple of our friends, actually, that we know, colleagues. And the top 3 characteristics that they looked for in a leader were empathy, compassion, and I think it was like self-reflection. So those 3, vision was the 4th one. So those 4, which basically 3 of them are emotional intelligence. And they can spot that now. I think before, maybe that wasn't as easy to see, but now in the work world, we can more easily see who has it and who doesn't.
Yeah. So let's go through the 3 things that we can do today, because that's what everybody's on. We've got 62 people on. Let's talk about 3 things that we can do today.
Okay.
To raise our EQ.
Sure. So I mean, EQ, just to get a little techie for a second, there are basically 15 skills that we look at with emotional intelligence. And I'm only going to talk about one, and that's self-awareness, which is the crux of emotional intelligence, right? Because essentially, if I'm not aware, there's not much I can do about it. We don't know what we don't know. So I'm going to start with, when we think about self-awareness, just in the specifics of walking into a meeting. And a meeting could be with a team, it could be with an individual, could be a meeting with yourself. I don't know how you do them, but just that setting alone. And one of the things that we talk about, especially with COVID, is that, you know, for us to claim space and just to claim time, just to be present, is one of the biggest things that I'm even seeing with leaders that I'm talking with today. Is there is so much clamoring for your time. There's so much change. And maybe for some, there's not a lot of change, but maybe there's people and other stressors that you're experiencing. So one is, how do we become more present?
What do you mean?
Super simple. It means taking a pulse check. So just like we check our heart rate, which I do, one is the pulse check where you're just stopping for 60 seconds. And you talk about this all the time. It's the 4 breaths, your box breathing that we do. And it allows just 1 minute to pause. And the reason why that's important is not just for ourselves, where we're able to stop and pause and think, how am I feeling? Do I have pain? Am I feeling stressed? Do I feel tired? But then you're also able to be more present for someone else. So if you're getting ready to go into a meeting with someone, you have declared that space to kind of like clear the tank of, I've left 40 meetings and 40 stressors, but I'm going to take 60 seconds to clear that tank and to give more space to the person that I'm going to see next.
Well, yeah, because this happens all the time. We talk to Sam. Sam's our teammate every morning. Sam doesn't get us on a clear tank. We're like, Sam, help us, our hair's on fire. Oh, I'm sorry. Like we have to do that too. We have to be like, clear our head. And part of this too is like what we were talking about. You're used to like going to a meeting, getting in your car, and drive to Starbucks.
Yep.
You have like a 20-minute Starbucks break. You're gonna drink that latte.
You're gonna call
take your time.
somebody.
You're gonna call your friend. How's your elephant? Whatever it is, whatever your newest pet is, whatever. And then you're gonna kind of go back to work, and we have these times to cool off and kind of recalibrate. But when you work from like, I don't know, your spare bedroom,
and you're home with your spouse, or maybe your kids, or maybe you're not home, and so then you feel more isolated. It's like all those things are happening. Yeah,
and then you're jumping from like, click off this Zoom, go to this Zoom, click off this, and after that, you still have the residue from the whole day on you. A long time ago, I met with Christy, and we talked about this idea that just like you drink water throughout the day, you've got to clear yourself throughout the day too. That you can't just keep piling it up, because it's natural that by the end of the day you're going to be toast.
Exactly.
So we talked about this idea of like, I can hear you now. I can hear you now. I'm ready. I can be present. You hear these words like hold space, and I think a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? Like, hold it. Just okay, I'm going to hold space for you. I don't know, but it's just that idea that I'm not so amped up that I'm going to react to everything and snip, but I can pause and go, and be curious. That's always, I like to do a gut check of myself of like, can I be curious right now? Can I actually believe that the way that you see this situation is different? Or am I so amped up and upset or irritated that there's no way I can really hear you? And you all know this in your gut, don't you? How do you know in your gut when you are not able to hear other people or be curious anymore? I watch people's breathing. I'm watching you guys like hawks. I literally watch to see their pattern of their breath. So if somebody's breathing quick, I'm like, this is probably not the time to try to like elicit compassion or empathy. It's really, there's times when you just know. So how do you know when you aren't able to be present? What does your body tell you? What does it feel like?
Because normally we notice it in our bodies before we even feel it.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
That's why it's a good question.
Racing thoughts. If you can't get your like when I don't feel like I can get my thinking straight. Yeah. So Amber would say, I look at my phone and open social media apps.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So even you can watch your behavior. Like, am I able to be present?
Personal temperature.
You'll feel hot. You'll start sweating. I feel my face change. Contempt shows up. I feel my face get really stiff. So I have to like loosen it up and do a couple exercises to calm my body down. Yeah. So this first step of get present, I think you want to do this as the first one because you really can't get around it. You have to start with like, am I able to be present right now? Or is my pulse racing? Or am I so wound up that I can't listen?
And everybody knows that you're not. So it's like,
everybody knows that you're not listening.
Yeah. We know what that looks like. You walk into a meeting and you're like, Oh yeah,
we were going to do a skip. Yeah. So it's like, we'll do that one for the last one. I got a better idea. Okay. So the second one, the first thing people can do to raise their EQ is to be present.
Yes.
The second one,
labeling emotions.
I'm curious, how many emotions do you think the average person uses?
5.
That's it? They have like a little house of like angry, happy.
Maybe joy sneaks in there, mad, tired.
This is basically Inside Out, the movie.
Exactly.
Everybody, your assignment is to watch Inside Out or Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So you got that, but how many do we really need to use to be healthy?
33. It's very specific.
It's quite a distance.
It's quite a distance.
Yeah. From 5 to 33.
And it's hard. I think some people, so much of what I do work with is not even being able to know what I feel or the feeling is good. I just feel good.
I feel good or bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the other reason we talk about labeling emotions, and were you guys here on the porch like 10 episodes ago? We were talking about amygdala hijack. If anybody remembers that, just give me a shout out. That'd be great. But amygdala hijack is when human beings are so stressed and triggered by their environment. Yes, Rebecca, thank you. Yes, Jamie knows exactly what I'm talking about. When your brain is triggered usually by visual things and you go into like fight or flight mode and we can't really think straight. If you ask anybody, what was March like for you this year? Everyone's like, March. It's a month on the edge of winter and spring. It's a blur. You know that feeling? That's because we were all in like panic amygdala hijack when we couldn't even get toilet paper. So when we're in that spot, this is also a trick to get out, is when you label your emotion, you pull in your executive functioning again. So instead of being like, you're like, okay, what am I, you're making me laugh. What am I actually feeling? And once I can, even if it's overwhelm every time, at least I have a label now. So it doesn't feel like it's just happening to me and like water falling all over me. I can actually be like, oh, I'm experiencing overwhelm. Okay, now what can I do?
Right, because then it's now at an arm's distance and you can see it. So then it's like, oh, this is overwhelm. What do I do when I'm overwhelmed?
Yeah.
I typically call a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't feel like it's part of you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also an indicator, right? They're actually really safe things to know. They tell us when we're upset. They tell us when we need something. They tell us when we're lonely. They keep us safe. And yet they aren't necessarily, they don't define us. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, because we know they're all eking out anyway. I mean,
that's the truth. I mean, if you're like, when you're like, are you pissed? The person's like, I'm not pissed.
Exactly. No.
Really? Okay. We're talking about like, what do we use? The sponge.
Yeah.
Everybody's like a little sponge. And throughout the day, people like to squeeze you and see what comes out. So it's so what emotion is coming out when people squeeze you? For like 2 months, just straight irritation came right out of me. Yeah. Lauren can tell you everything. I'm like, I got an email today. Is it bad? I don't know.
It's true.
That's what happened. And so, okay, so I got a question for you because this is kind of a generational thing too.
Okay.
Vulnerability at work.
Yeah. I was like, and I'm ready for the emotional question.
Once, we all talk about being vulnerable, but there's like friendship vulnerability. And then there's like professional vulnerability. And you and I have been on calls where somebody's like, sorry, I'm just really overwhelmed. They go into this whole backstory, and it's supposed to be a professional conversation. So can we talk about this? Can we talk about it in the chat too? The professional vulnerability. What do you mean by that? Versus, we're talking about labeling emotions.
Yeah.
So you're telling me to label my emotions, and you're saying, but don't tell people in the office how you feel. Is that what it is?
It's really, and I actually love this conversation, because I think there's this piece of us that I think people feel caught. Like, well, I'm supposed to be vulnerable and tell
Brene Brown.
Yeah. And then at the same time, it's like, that's too much. That was unprofessional.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that line? And I think we've talked about this, and it's this piece around this, you have this social contract when you're at work that you are there, you are performing a job.
Mm-hmm.
You've agreed to a role that you're doing, and emotions are at play. So when those emotions directly affect the work that you're doing, or how you perform the work, or the relationships that you need to do the work well, then that is the space and time to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels safer when it's this idea of, I'm concerned about this because, like, I'm concerned about this project because how it may affect our clients. That's a really appropriate feeling to say. But if you kept going and saying, like, I'm really concerned because, my boyfriend left me last week, and I've got $5 to my name.
I got drunk last night. I'm a little hungover.
It might be, yeah, anyway. So that would be too much. That would be,
mm-hmm.
And I think the other piece is we look for, there's a reciprocity in friendship, and there isn't that type of reciprocity that is at play at work.
Unless you two are like exclusive, like if you're like, we are friends, we're not just
That's
like
different.
Co-workers. Yeah. And a lot of bosses will ask me, like, now you're saying with these millennials that I'm supposed to like talk about feelings, but how do I keep respect? How am I supposed to be the boss when you're telling me to be their friend? And so that's the other piece of reciprocity too, is that you can take care of your team if you're leading people, but that doesn't mean that you expect them to turn around and take care of you.
Yeah.
That you, as a leader, we get our cup filled somewhere else. And then we go to our team, we pour our cup out. Mm-hmm. We serve them, and then we go back and get, mm-hmm. And if Nick Gallo and I talked about this last week too, so you can check that out.
Mm-hmm.
Was that research with the throat? Was that the research we were talking about earlier with emotional intelligence?
Which part?
About like the 4 different things, the 4 different emotional intelligence cues that you talked about earlier.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I saw Denny on here. Hi, Denny. Some come in, so I said I wanted to say hi. Okay, so labeling. Oh, what are people saying over here?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, Kelsey, this is perfect. Saying out loud that you're having a rough day.
Yes.
That's exactly right. You don't have to be like, I'm having a rough day. There are 30 things, like going to the point of venting. Everybody's like, cool. I have work to do. I've got stuff to do.
Yep. That piece of acknowledging how you feel, because that happens when we come into a space and we might have had a rough meeting right before.
Yeah.
Or we've got 2 kids that are in our back room and we're going to take a meeting. We're going to say, I just want to acknowledge here, I've got 2 kids. I might be a little bit distracted, but I'm going to try to do X, X, and X.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfectly appropriate.
Yeah. It's just not being like, sorry, my kids are here. I'm really stressed. One of them just pooped on the wall. I was crying earlier. I think, not going way into venting.
Yes.
And your feelings around things. Because we've all been in this situation too, where somebody like keeps going and you're like, mm-hmm. It's not that you don't want to be compassionate or kind. It's just that we're all at work because we've agreed to do this X project, whatever it is. We've agreed to get that done. And that's really why we're together.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound cold? Does this make sense? This is such an interesting thing to talk about, like into a screen. Thanks, Kelsey. Not cold. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. So many of us, and Lori said this, so many people working from home during this time has helped significantly for people to utilize emotional intelligence. Exactly.
I love that. I like Trevor was saying, as far as like looking at what does disruption of workflow means. It's like, if you're taking someone's entire day because you're venting, that would be a disruption.
Let's talk about what Trevor wrote. He said, I think if you work with humans in any capacity, emotions should have a place at work. Exactly. And that's why we have to grow in emotional intelligence, because when leaders come to me and they're like, emotional intelligence, just get the job done. I'm like, no, that is inhumane. I love that you use that word. Work should create environment or educate where, when it's appropriate and safe to do so. Yes. Trevor, nailed it. Love that. What if your company, Lauren, flat out tells you they don't care about your personal life? Tammy.
Well,
they have low emotional intelligence.
It's impossible to not care about your personal life because your personal life comes with you. You're a whole person. So this.
Touché.
Yeah. I think that's this whole idea of like, the professional and personal work life is separate.
That's right.
Especially right now, it's not true. So it's
impossible.
Again, it goes back to, how do we then talk about it? How do we talk about our emotions in a way that doesn't expect someone to fix them for us or take responsibility for them? And for us to be aware of what we need and to be able to also say what we need in a good way.
Yeah. And as a follow-up, everybody, Tammy left that company, which is probably the best thing for her to do, because that's just like proof is in the pudding. You don't care for our employees. We're inhumane. They're going to leave. We've got to build our emotional intelligence. Amber said it this way: venting's not always productive. That's very true. And venting is different than asking for a solution too. Like, hey, this thing happened. How do you think I should handle it? That's totally different than like, oh, again, Debbie, here we go. That's a totally different situation. This is so good. Keep chatting, everybody. Okay, so it's a second one. Labeling emotions. We said be present, which means you got to air out, fill your cup. I like to walk barefoot in the grass. I've dodged all the dog poop so far. I'm proud of myself, but I like to be able to do that, to get present.
Yeah, walking outside helps a ton.
Label your emotions so you know how to support yourself and you know how to ask for what you need when you can. And then this last piece, I love this one, setting an intention.
Yeah, so, we are really good at, or working at, being very good at setting agendas, right? It allows people, one, you get really clear with who's there, what you're going to talk about, what's important, and what does a result look like at the end of the meeting. So in the same way, prepping intentionally with your EQ. So thinking about, questions like, how do I want to show up in this meeting?
Yep.
What does success look like in this meeting? Even how you want people to, it's not so much how you want people to feel, but it's how you want to care for people in that meeting. So and the last one is assuming positive intent. And that just means that, it goes back to my example as an HR manager, when I would get frustrated or need to have a hard conversation, I might get into my own world, and I'm into my own spiral story about how this person did this and this and this and this. I know that person didn't want to wreck my life or wreck my day.
Yeah.
And what happened didn't feel good. So it's this acknowledgement of like, I can hold the space that you didn't really mean to ruin my day. And I do want to talk about this. And so how can we work together towards the end solution?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This idea too of having positive intent. I think one thing our team that we talk a lot about, and we train other teams to do, is to talk about things in systems. So it's not that you and I, that you don't know how to talk or you don't know how to communicate. It's our communication system is broken. So what do we need to do to fix the system? Because that's just an EQ piece of like, if I attack you or make it about you screwing it up, your ego dragon comes out and now we're not getting anything done. Have you ever felt triggered like that? Have you ever had somebody who trips you and upsets you and makes you feel judged and pointing the finger at you? Do you ever find a solution? And so I think there's a lot of sense here to set your intentions as a leader. If there's something you're trying to fix, there's probably a system that needs to be fixed. People, aren't broken. The system is broken that they're working within. And to make sure that the blame is being put not on another individual in the room. I think that idea of setting an intention too, that takes a lot of, and I don't know how all of you feel, but let's just do like a quick confessional. Setting an intention, like at this point, we all have to do that. I've been doing that since COVID started. Like, okay, we're going to make the most of today. My intention is to connect. My intention is to bring energy. That stuff doesn't come out of me like just willy-nilly. That's like a conscious choice of how we show up. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think that's 100% true. And I think, especially now more than ever, it allows us to be really thoughtful about, one, what we need, and even being able to say that or acknowledge that at the beginning of the meeting, like, I really want us to walk away feeling more connected about this, or I want to make sure, we feel understood, so that you're able to, again, say those exact words in the meeting, which is very connecting, which builds trust and safety. So there's a I don't want two-handed punch. What's the cliche?
A 1-2 punch.
1-2 punch. 1-2 punch for that. So, and the person's like, oh, that really makes me feel good. Like you're caring about me, which we know that is so much of the essence of being able to have a really connected, effective workforce, is to feel cared for.
Yeah. What do you think stops people from setting an intent every day? If everybody here's like, yeah, obviously set intentions. Why do you think we don't do it?
Well, I think there's a lot of different reasons. One is we get so distracted by our time that we think we can take on more than what we can.
Oh, I'm the king.
Yeah. So I do it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're in our 4th meeting and it's like, you know, screw the intention. I just need to get this thing done and I'm out of here.
I haven't been for 4 hours. My intention is to get through this meeting as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Yeah. I think sometimes too, if I'm already revved up.
Oh yeah.
Hello, caffeine. But if I'm already revved up too much too, it's harder to like, okay, what are we actually doing here? What are we doing?
Well, part of it, I mean, half the time there may not even be an agenda and you're like, what are we talking about here? What's the deal? So that other piece too of not really knowing what to expect, which can be a whole other part of it.
I think, I wonder though too, when that happens, I love when somebody in the meeting is like, hey, what the hell are we doing here? Like, if you don't know, you don't have to pretend that you do know. Wouldn't it be better and quicker to just say, hey, I'm not really sure. Of course, 100%. Don't say, what the hell are we doing here? Okay, my friends. But like, hey, I'm not really sure what the intent of the meeting is. I want to make sure whatever it is that we get it done. So what do you need from me?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's, as a leader too, you think about how that would feel if you're just the person, doesn't have to be a leader. A person came in and said to you, I want to make sure that you feel understood. I want to make sure that we feel aligned on this. That matters to me.
Yep.
You're going to be in a much more connected spot. You're going to, there's no confusion about what the intention is. And again, it makes things a lot faster. It makes things a lot more seamless.
Okay, awesome. So we've got be present or get present, which doesn't take long. Does everybody know what box breathing is? It's a Navy SEAL trick. You breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, and rest. That's a great way to get present. Navy SEALs use it when like bullets are flying by their heads. So we could probably use it like in the office. Yeah. And then labeling emotions. There's emotion wheels out there too. Sam, can you put a link in the chat to an emotion wheel? I've got a bunch. I've got one on my Instagram you can find too, but Sam's going to take care of it because she's amazing. And then 3 setting intentions. So if we were to start to do this, and this is what's so crazy, we do this with our clients and what happens to them? They end up leading other people. Their stress goes down. They might be, I know some of them get promotions just because people are saying, okay, you clearly are able to handle this level of intensity. So now you can lead others. What else do you see happening when you bring this type of EQ work to teams or to companies?
You're no longer asking for someone else to fix things that you need to be responsible for.
Oh, that's like Amy Woodall, own your 50.
Yeah. So it really is, I am committed to owning the stuff that can either get in the way or that I need some help on or that I need some support in that doesn't belong here.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're also modeling that for your team. So it's this holistic experience for people.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I find that obviously teams work a lot better together too. There's more understanding. There's less tension. Get stuff done quicker because you're not kind of stumbling all over each other, getting frustrated. So that's huge.
Well, and it's, you know, think about you're in a team setting. One person gives a weird look when you're talking about something that you want to implement. Your immediate thought, here's just a hunch, is what's that person thinking? Why they make that face? What are they thinking right now about me? They don't want to support it. And then the spiral begins. But if I were to stop and say, hey, you know, at the end of the meeting, maybe, hey, I'm just checking in. How'd you think that went? I noticed, you know, you weren't, it looked like maybe you weren't quite sure what was going on or just want to check in. That absolves so many issues versus 6 months.
Everybody being tense.
Drama. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's, is there anything else you want to say about that? I want to get some questions.
No.
Let's pepper her with questions, people. Give us the hard ones. Who's got a question? Hey, Sam, can you jump on with us? Are there any questions that we missed? I've been trying to watch the chat. I'm going to start scanning. Let's see. Who has a questione? Oh, there she is.
So
Hey,
far,
Sam.
we've covered most of them.
Okay.
Out, but yeah, any new ones?
Anybody else have a question about emotional intelligence? Even if there's a scenario where you're like, is this like, even if you have an interesting scenario, I'd love to hear it. I'll tell you, even one thing that we can work on, all of us, and we work on it too, is when we're on Zoom, as soon as your camera comes on, it's like you just walked into the room.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same exact, not exact, neuroscience wise, it's not the same exact, but it's very similar because people look at your face right away naturally to figure out where you're at. And so I know I've had to do that thing where I'm like, the camera's coming on in 3, 2, 1, hi. And it sounds kind of funny, but the moment that people decide if you're happy to see them or not shapes the rest of the meeting.
100%.
105%. Okay, what's the question? With working from home, is it best to have EQ conversations via email, hop on the phone, in person? You're going to need to buy a lot of plexiglass. One of you get in the box. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. How do I talk to people? Okay, what do you think?
Well, one, it's so true. The whole how do I talk to people thing, we're all a little awkward right now. But the best thing is as much contact that you can have where you can see their body language. So
that's the trick.
If you can do FaceTime, if you can do, that would be like optimal, right? Well, optimal's in person, then Zoom, FaceTime, and then on the phone. So that
tone
you can
of
hear
voice.
something. Even the tone of voice on the phone systems don't give us exactly, they're like muted tones. So we even miss cues that way too. So that's the best way to try to get as close as you can to what they're really feeling.
Yeah. How about, have you done any research on women-led organizations in EQ levels?
Yeah, so I haven't done any research on that. And I am curious about that. I don't know, in my own experience with my own surveys that I've done, there has been no predictor for women or men. Now there are predictors in certain categories, like empathy typically is higher for women that I have seen, but I am deeply curious if there's a difference for women-led organizations.
Awesome. That'd be interesting to look into. Okay, the 3 things some people said. What are the 3 things again? It's to be present or get present. Label your emotions. How am I feeling today? What's going on? Set intentions. Yep. So you can keep asking questions. We're going to wrap up here in the next few minutes. I've got another webinar. I'm on webinar galores today.
You are.
Tonight. Yeah, it's a lot. It's great though. I love it. So here's the dealio. We have a little surprise for you. What we keep hearing is like, please help me with emotional intelligence. And a lot of us want to grow in this way. And here's the thing. We both basically coach exclusively high achievers. And high achievers have certain patterns of emotional intelligence that they're missing, which means they're usually burnt out. They're using their stress against them. They're taking on more than they can actually handle. We end up sacrificing ourselves thinking that's the way to success. And so to us, we were like, who could we serve with emotional intelligence? And we were like, high achievers. Because your heart's in the right place. You want to do great work and you're crispy. You're tired. So we put together a 4-class course that you can join us on, an EQ course. And it's just a month long. It's over lunch. We're obviously all going to bring our snacks. I noticed earlier somebody's drinking iced tea. Excellent. We're going to sit together over lunch every Thursday in August and September. So you have a little time and you can jump in the EQ course. It'll be like you have to pay to get in. So it's like definitely more exclusive. And we'll keep doing the porch. We'll keep talking about cool stuff on the porch. But if you're like, hey, I really want to invest in myself in this way, I really want to grow my emotional intelligence, you're going to want to join us over lunches on Thursdays. Deeper dive. So if you want to know more about that, we'll put some links in the chat. You can see it right here to learn more. You can check it out. Lauren and I both have it on our websites. We'd love to have you be a part of it. And you can always, obviously, you can shoot us a message, ask us questions about it. We're super excited about it because this is the missing piece for a lot of us in our career. This is the piece that without this, we end up feeling really fried and we miss kind of our highest calling, our self-actualization, because we need to take care of ourselves in the midst. Is there anything else you want to say about the course?
Well, I think there's so much experience, knowledge, intel, statistical data, everything like that. And if we can all answer that for ourselves, that we know what that gap looks like. We know that, we know in someone that we follow, what those gaps, how that hinders them, and maybe even how that hinders how you see them. So we know it's out there. And I think just acknowledging that this can be the thing that is your secret sauce to the next move that you want to make. Yeah. And it isn't about you doing more, which I think is the most beautiful thing.
High achievers, we're not going to ask you to do more. We're just going to ask you to have lunch with us 4 times, give you very targeted, focused information about emotional intelligence so you can build the life you dream of. That's all. That's great.
That's funny.
I'm so glad we got to do this. I'm glad I got to see a 4-dimensional human on the porch. It's been great. We will be back. We're taking a week off I'm taking a week off because it's July 4th week. And then we'll be back with a CEO that's been working with a shark from Shark Tank. I'm not kidding. I'm so excited. I've been talking about the CEO for a few years. She's a CEO of a bank. She's been working to get PPP loans out for people in partnership with Mark Cuban. She's a ferocious leader. She's awesome. You are definitely going to meet her. She's coming up in July. She'll be our next Porch guest, and obviously I'm going to ask her a bunch of questions about Mark Cuban and get way off topic. So
obsessed.
I am obsessed. I'm so glad I'm having her on though. Her name's Jill Castilla. She's awesome. So if anybody else has any EQ questions, we're happy to take them. Sam, I don't think we missed any, did we?
We got a couple more.
Yes. Should our intentions be set? That one?
And then one before it from Amber. How do you approach a team member who's not self-aware?
How do you approach a team member that is a knucklehead? I'm sorry, is not self-aware.
This takes a lot of effort. And at the same time, it's really about when I've had lots of people that aren't self-aware. So I get the position that you're in, a lot of understanding from this side of the screen. And it's still your own journey. So the more that you are self-aware, it models that. And you do feel a difference from other people, but you don't do it so that the other person becomes more self-aware. I hope that makes sense.
What was that statistic that you found about like how many people think they're self-aware? So
basically around 90%, I believe, of people think they're self-aware, but actually I think it's 15% actually are. So
welcome to the club, everybody.
We all in the space of becoming self-aware. And so know that you're on the same journey, and there are certain things that you can do that still help the relationship get stronger, for you to manage your own emotions, right? Because that's a big core of emotional intelligence, is your own piece of that and how we impact other people.
Love that. Okay, the other question was from Trevor. Should our intentions that we set be ambitious or realistic and easily achievable?
I think it could be all 3.
I think it depends on where your start point is. Yeah. Like on days when I'm struggling to like make it happen, anything feels ambitious because I've already like gotten present with myself, labeled my emotions. So I'm like, so my intention today is to be kind and get these things done on my checklist. It's going to be pretty basic today. So I think it probably depends on how you feel too, if it seems ambitious or not. What do you think?
Well, I'm just curious I have more questions, which I know is helpful. So I do think it really is about, what does ambitious mean? What does that look like? Could it be in 3 meetings versus 1 meeting? Is it about your day? So there's a lot of nuance to what Lindsay was saying too, is that ambitious could be unloading the dishwasher, right?
Some days it's really small, everybody. Yeah. Okay, I'm so glad we got to do this.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming to the porch, which is really just a spare bedroom. I really want to do the porch outside today, but our neighbor is there's a neighbor mowing our lawn. So
it's not happening.
I was going to ask Bill to stop, but he wants to get it done. How can people connect with you? Get on your website?
Yeah, website. So Lauren@sparkhr.co.
.com.
Yep. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm around.
She's all around. Yeah. You can easily find her. Thank you so much for coming. We had a blast with you talking about EQ. We'll keep this conversation going. It's so important. We want you to grow in this way so that you feel better about yourself and just everything that you've moved through. I just want to say, I know what a challenging year it's been for all of us. And the fact that you take time to come on the porch and hang out with us and build your own inner strength and encourage yourself, it says a lot about you. And I know a lot of you return all the time. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to build you up. I want you to feel confident. I want you to feel light. I want you to be excited about your life. And so the fact that you take this time for you says so much about you. I have so much respect for everybody that comes to spend time together, and you take the time to engage too, which is amazing. So thank you all. We've got so many thank yous in the chat. Thank you, friends. We're so glad we got to do this with you. We're so glad that you got to also have your own conversation in the chat. That's fantastic. That's what we love. We'll keep the conversation going. We'll see you after July 4th with Jill, our friend that's 1 degree away from Shark Tank. So
awesome.
I'm really excited.
Geeking out all week.
I am going to be geeking out all week. It's true. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
We appreciate it.